right. Well, shit.
Yeah.
This feels real weird.
It's
I have
weird.
to say.
It is weird.
Maybe for people, if people are listening to this, unfortunately, our co-host and friend, Dr. Gregory Diggs, unexpectedly passed away this weekend. We are really blindsided by this. We are really sad and upset about it and heartbroken. And even sitting here tonight without him at this table feels very strange. But what I knew of him is he would have wanted us to keep going and keep pushing the conversation forward. And so I guess that's why we're here tonight. And it is just me and White James.
And this is going to be, we are going to push forward with the show, and we're going to figure out what that's going to look like format-wise and stuff. But tonight is really just going to be our messy, honest, thinking about and talking about Greg episode. And we're going to sit and do that. And we do have some unreleased material that we recorded with Greg earlier on that we will be putting out as we sort of right the ship and figure out what we're going to do with new stuff going forward.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about how I met Craig. I hope I can even get through this. I met him because I posted a blog post on the neighborhood website next door, which is possibly one of the most racist website like group things in the country.
It's like Stormfront and then next door.
Yeah, I feel like that's a pretty good assessment of it. And I wrote a piece about my son, and it was about Alton. Oh my God, I can't think of his name. Alton Sterling. Who my piece was it was called My Son Will Never Be Alton Sterling, I think was his name. I hate to, oh God. But, and it was just about how my son presents as white, and I'm not going to have to worry about him getting pulled over and shot and killed because of the color of his skin. And I had a lot of issues around my son coming out so white, and it was kind of a thing. It's that's what my film project is, all of those things. But sadly, I feel grateful that he is phenotypically white, because I think it's going to protect him in ways that other people in my family are not protected. So, to make a long story longer, I just had posted it, and I posted it in Nextdoor because I write for this website where it was important for us to get traffic to the site, and we even got a bonus, right? So I shared it there because I thought, you know what, people probably will click on it, and people clicked on it, that's for sure. And the first comment was fine. The first comment was oh, I have a mixed race son, or thanks for sharing your story, something like that. But then they started getting I mean, this is a couple of years ago, so I almost don't remember but what they were. But some of them were, people were just getting all borderline racist or just racist, I guess. And then someone sent me a private message telling me a little known fact about Black people is that Black Africans enslaved other Africans. And I was what the fuck is this white nonsense happening right now? And it's just the comments were kind of going a certain way, and I got really upset. And I was out in my yard walking around, or out on the streets, and my neighbor was there, and I was oh, did you see what happened on Nextdoor? And then she's oh, you should meet this woman. I don't know if I should say her name. I shouldn't, right?
Probably not.
Okay.
I don't know. Let's go with no.
Okay, we'll go with no.
We'll call her Sally.
Sally. And she's you should meet Sally. Sally's white, but she's really into social justice. And I was oh, cool. So then I found out that Sally had like some Black Lives Matter signs, and I was like, oh, cool. And so I met her, and then I got connected to her, this like Facebook group, this local group, and that's how I met Dr. Diggs, was kind of through through that friend. And when I met him, I thought, oh my God, this guy is great. And he was so smart and so like, I just felt so comfortable with him. I felt so good. And like, it's so rare for a man to be able to like be friends with a woman. And I'm always like suspicious of dudes and stuff. And I basically like, most of my like male friends, like I hope they're married and we go on like double dates and stuff. Like that's like what I do, you know? I hardly have any male friends.
Sure.
Present company excluded. Why, James, you are my friend.
Yeah. Well, I'm married and we double date. So that's all right. I met the criteria.
Yeah, so you know. But he never gave me any kind of like creepy vibe or anything.
No.
Which is always a plus when interacting with a man.
Greg was a rare older man who really kept it in his age group. He was single, and he had his eye out for sure.
Yeah.
But it was for age appropriate women.
In some cases.
Well, okay. The eye was less discerning, but the dating was pretty age appropriate.
Yes, he did like age appropriate women, I would say. Yeah, he was good. And then we just started talking, and I felt a very strong connection to him, and we just got along, and we would, I don't know, I almost like, I don't even remember, you know what I mean? Like those early days of our friendship, because I feel like it just felt like I knew him forever. And I don't even think I knew him that long before it was Thanksgiving, and I said, hey, what are you doing on Thanksgiving? And he said, oh, I kind of had a falling out with my friend, and it had to do with race. And I said, well, you should come to my Thanksgiving dinner. And I said, and he was like, oh, I don't want to impose. And I was like, I would really love it if you come. Because we had lost my mom earlier that year to cancer, pancreatic cancer. And I just told him, I was like, it's going to be a really hard Thanksgiving for us. This is our first Thanksgiving without our mom, and my dad and my sister are flying out. And I just think it would be nice if you were here. I think it would like help. And he came, and he was a wonderful dinner guest, and it was just a really nice moment. And I always just felt really close to him, I guess. And then the more we talked and got together, then I was doing my thing where I asked people to like do stuff for free for me. Highway James. and I said, hey, would you want to like maybe do a talk sometime at the library for me? And we can like get together. And he was like, yeah, he's like, I consider that like community service. And so I came up with this idea of doing a program called Am I Racist? And I didn't want to put my name on it because I was like, oh, I work here and blah, blah, blah. So I didn't want to do it. But it was like our program. So he put it together. We did it. It was like pretty successful. And then we just started having these like talks at the library. And that's how we kind of, so we were always working on that. And then we decided that we were going to maybe like go into business together, and that we wanted to like write a book. And he was always talking about this idea of like writing a book. And he would send me things, and he would say like, oh, this could be for our book. This could be for our book. And we were just kind of slowly putting things together for that. So like our work together was really nice, I felt like. And the other thing, he was really influential for me in that like I am making a film right now about multiracial, like mixed race identity. And I don't know if a lot of people know this, but Dr. Diggs, his kids are biracial, black and white. His ex-wife was white, or is white. And so it had a special place in his heart. I didn't even realize that he had, a white wife. I kind of was surprised, to tell you the truth, because I thought he was kind of like, he was a little militant around the edges. Like, people see Dr. Diggs, and he would describe himself as Carlton Banks. But the conversations that we had were very different than whatever his, like, outward persona was.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, listeners of the podcast probably heard some of that, at least. He was often sort of the format of the show here was that he was a little more of the intellectual foil to
my insanity.
Yeah.
So what
and that was, but to be fair, that's kind of the concept, and that's how we would talk about it. But in practice, the way the episodes would go, Greg would get very, very frank and very real.
Yeah.
About
and that was the thing. Like, he was already on that path, I think. And he told me once that because of me, he felt like he was like ready to give up on white people. And there is this poem that he wrote called The Good Negro. And I think it'll be around. And but he wrote that, I think, before we met. And he was like done with white people. Kind of like he just was like, I don't even want to bother anymore. But I kind of rejuvenated in him like this idea of being able to like push forward and still be able to, you know, maybe possibly like change hearts and minds or whatever. Like, I feel like he did tell me that. Like, he was like, well, he's like, you kind of got me back into like, you know, he was like ready to.
Yeah.
And the other thing I guess I just think about, like, you know, my husband said this, like, that he is probably the person that had the most influence on me in my life in such a short time. All of my projects, all of this stuff were all connected to him. I absolutely loved working with him and talking to him. And sometimes, like, we got, like, mad, except that, guess what? Only I got mad. Greg did not get mad. Like, he would just be like, whatever, you know?
Yeah.
Like, he would, you know, but he wasn't. Like, I'd be, like, upset or whatever. And I felt like it was good because we could, like, talk through it. And I loved that about him, you know? And with my film, it means a lot to me, and it meant a lot to him. He was crazy about the idea. And when we, and the reason I even made it was because, like, there's a couple of reasons I made it, but, like, the real spark of the film project was because I watched this, like, whack-ass documentary that I thought was going to be good about mixed race people. And I'm not even going to say the name of it. Because I was watching it, and at first it was cool. Like, I was like, oh, Ken, I'm like, we should watch this. Like, it's this documentary about, like, mixed race people. And we were both, like, really excited to watch it. Okay.
Right.
So we put it in, we start watching it, and it starts off good, where the guy's just, like, talking about, like, race and how his race doesn't fit in a box and all this stuff. And then it took a turn, okay? And then they were talking about, why don't Republicans campaign in the hood? And then it just kept getting weirder and weirder. And the guy, like, the overlay was, like, this guy being like, identity politics are ruining America. And then I was like, what is this?
Yeah.
And it was actually Greg's birthday. It was his birthday. And I texted him, and I'm like, what the fuck? I'm watching this movie. Because I showed a trailer of it for, like, our racial justice group. Because I was like, well, I'll buy it and we'll, like, watch it as a group or whatever.
Yeah.
You know? Because the trailer looked good. I'm going to show you that trailer later.
Yeah,
dude.
I'll have
And you're
to
gonna
see
and
that.
you're gonna be like, no, this looks good. And I'm gonna be like, it's not good.
God, that's funny.
So anyway, so then I was so upset by it that I, like, called him, and he's like, I'll order it. And then he texted me, and he's like, I just downloaded it. It's my birthday. It's a present. I'm just gonna watch it. Then he calls me after, and he's like, I know what this is. This is like a propaganda. He's like, this is very bold. He's like, but anytime you see anything that has, like, identity politics on it, he's like, that is the secret. And I had just never seen anything like that.
Yeah.
And I was furious. And I have this blog, like, Denver Bitch, where I just, like, write crazy rants and stuff. And then, like, restaurant reviews or whatever. Like, I'm like, everyone's racist. And P.S. Like, check out Saigon Bowl. So I said, I'm going to write about this. And I'm going to just go crazy. And he said, don't write about that. He said, don't give it any more attention. You don't need to give that thing attention. And then I said, I'm going to make my own movie about mixed race people. Yeah. And that's how I started my project. Was just from that, like, one conversation. He was such a spark, you know?
Yeah.
He was such a spark. So I guess that there were just so many things going on with him, and I don't know. I can't believe he's gone. It's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
Do you remember when you first met him?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't have a really, really memorable first meeting. It was a party here at your house, I believe, for Kingston's birthday. And Greg was just there. We were in the backyard. I think I shook hands with him and we exchanged some pleasantries. But then I would run into him here and there here at your house for a couple of other meetups. But it was really pretty. I didn't really get to know Greg well until we started this podcast in October.
Yeah. And it was your idea, dude.
It was sort of, well, it was initially you had the idea that you and I should do a show.
Yeah.
And I guess that was just based on us having a funny rapport or whatever. And I was sort of like, yeah, that would be funny. But I was like, but you and Greg, you do these presentations together. You already have a duo thing.
Yeah.
Like, it should be you guys and you should let me produce it. And that was the concept, and it worked from the minute we sat down.
It did.
And but yeah, I didn't know Greg well. I had seen him at some dinner parties or whatever at your house, and I knew what he was about. I was a little, I don't want to say intimidated by him because he was not an intimidating guy. He didn't put people off that way, but I was intimidated by him because I'm just generally a nervous wreck, and if I meet people who I really respect and have a bearing and are clearly really smart and whatever, then I'm usually pretty quiet. As probably evidenced by anyone who's listened to this podcast when, Theo Wilson or H. Soul or any number of geniuses have been here in the room, and I'm just like,
oh, you just talk a lot when I'm here, though.
Yeah.
Rude.
But actually and this is getting a little off track, but that's actually something that I've been thinking about with regard to Greg lately. I've thought about how I did have things that I wanted to talk to Greg about and get into with Greg. I've recently, in the past few months, been really, pondering, a career move into public ed. And Greg would have been, a tremendous sounding board for that kind of thing. And there's really no reason that I didn't get into it with him, except that, I was always much more in a listening space with him and not trying to put my shit on him. But, it's funny. As I've sat and I've thought about what was so great about Greg and why even people like me who feel like I didn't know him that long felt so close to him, was that he was generous with himself. He was really genuine about who he was. He was genuine about his emotions and his feelings. He was generous about what he was interested in, and he was proactive about what he was interested in. And I realized, instead of being intimidated and deferential to Greg, I should have been following his example. I should have been mirroring that. I should have been putting my whole self out there, and I should have been talking about what I was interested in. And so there's some regret in there that it's too late to do that with Greg, but it's something that I've really been taking inspiration from this week and trying to incorporate more in my life. He was bottom line, he was an inspiring guy. His was the kind of life that you looked at and you were like, that's a life. I need to be doing things in my life that get me closer to what that looks like.
Yeah.
That's what knowing Greg was about.
Yeah. As you were talking about that, I was just thinking, like, tonight we had our program scheduled at my library. It was our first time doing it in Denver. We had done it last week with our little company, and it was called Keeping It Real Beyond Polite Conversation, because this was the reason we were doing this podcast too. It was like, because I wanted a space where I could, like, really talk about race and really talk about things that bother me and just talk about whatever. And my joke though with Greg was, I always was like, and then I want you to put some academic stank on it.
Right.
That was like what I always would say to him. I'm like, I want academic stank. And he was down for it. Like, and he always would say, like, I'm supporting you. Like, whatever you want to do, I support you. Good.
Yeah, it's good.
And that was something I felt like he really lived up to that, like I was like, okay, listen, man, I would tell him my idea and then he could, like, bring it to fruition, I was like, okay, this is what I want. I want to make like a rubric about how we can have like an uncomfortable conversation. Like, can you do that? And he was like, yeah, I think I can do that. And he would just like do it. Or I'd say, I want this. And, and I just felt like we worked so well together and we complimented each other so much. And so tonight, I didn't cancel the program. And I didn't cancel it because I felt like what a wonderful opportunity to put out like the message that we have to people who are probably going to be willing to receive it.
Yeah.
So, and I wanted a chance for people to come together because it was really shocking and he knows so many people. And I just thought like, I might as well do it. And I'm just going to like talk about it. And I got up there tonight in front of the room and we had a huge turnout. My coworker generously put in the stats for it, but it was like 69 people and 2 babies because we count babies differently.
I don't even know how you fit.
They were
71 people in that space.
They were smashed in there. People were standing. People were sitting on the ground. Like it was good. I mean, it was a good turnout.
And to give some context for how, raw this all still is, we're recording this on Wednesday the 28th, and we got the word of Greg's passing on Saturday night, so just 4 nights ago. Yeah. So it's very new to everybody.
Yeah. Well, and according to Kimberly Ming, who was on episode 8, she says it takes 7 days for the spirit to move on to the wherever it's going, and that we can expect him to be around us now. So he's probably here. I mean, I don't really have those kind of beliefs, but I felt like tonight, like today, instead of being super nervous, which whenever Greg and I were going to present together, I'd be like, oh, I'm nervous. I want this and that. And he would be like, you're always nervous. And he would just laugh. And he would just be like, I don't need to worry about it. I just do what I do, And I would be kind of like keyed up. And then I always typically do fine, but that's just part of, who I am.
Yeah.
And today I just was like, I was actually talking to Tamara Banks, and she came out to film for us tonight, but she was like, I told her, I was like, I'm just winging it. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing tonight. I don't know who's coming. I don't know what's going to happen. Like, I really don't know.
Yeah.
And I felt like fine about it. And I kind of felt like, I know it sounds weird because I don't have like a belief in that, but like I was looking for this book, right? I was like looking for stuff. And yesterday, like I couldn't find my wallet. And then I had this like way overdue copy of Citizen by like Claudia Rankine, right? And I like, or what's her name? Claudine? I don't know. It doesn't matter. Cut that. Leave it in. Fuck it. No editing on this.
Yeah, I think this episode might not be edited.
I feel like fuck editing. Just
I
put
think
it up.
Also when we release some of the old audio, maybe we should leave that as unedited as possible.
Yeah.
Just kind of.
Yeah.
I feel like, I don't know. This isn't the time when I'm trying to put together a tight, perfect show.
Okay,
I'm happy to just have it be.
You can just leave that in then,
Yeah.
okay? But anyway, I said her name wrong, but I don't care, okay? I have notes, but not with me. So I couldn't find it. I was looking for it forever. I'm not even kidding you. Like, I was like, oh shit, I'm gonna have to like pay for this book. And like, I was like mad about it. And I just found it. It was like, I know it seems stupid, but it was like deep in my purse, right?
Yeah.
But it was like there it was there the whole time. And I'm like, oh snap. And I don't know why, but I looked up and I said, thanks, Greg. And I was just like, it was just weird. I mean, I've been looking for that book for like a significant amount of time.
Yeah.
And I swear it wasn't in there. I know that sounds so foofy.
No.
But
I'm foofier than out of the two of us. I'm the foofier one, so that's fine. There's no judgment from over here.
Yeah, it was definitely like, ugh. So I did feel, I kind of felt him, or I felt like I was like, okay, like I was calm, and I just like, and I was emotional. Like I had a thing to read, and I did what I did, and but sorry, this is a real ramble. But I was thinking about it when you said that, Greg, like the impact he had on you, and that you feel like, okay, well, I can't tell him, but I'm going to be able to do more or whatever. This young reporter, his name is Alan Tellis, and He totally like wants to come on the show, by the way. I mean,
Great.
he was always asking me if he can come on. And he's young and he's just this reporter, and he was doing the story. He was covering like the story about change the name Stapleton and stuff like that. And he got up, he came and he spoke, and he said that, he's like, that guy changed my life. Like, he's like, we met, and then like one of the first things he said to me was, he was like, oh, you're smart. You're an intellectual. And he was like, I am. And now he's like, I won this like journalism award, and I've got like this new job. And he's like, and I think it's all, he's like, oh, I'm a girlfriend. But it was really, it was really funny because it was really sweet. He's like, my girlfriend. He's like, but also he's like, Dr. Diggs had this influence on me. And actually, when the paper called me to talk to me, it was because Alan called me first and said, I can't write this because I feel too close to him.
Yeah.
And he was just, that's how he was, you know what I mean? Like, he just would just go in and like, when he would talk to you, you felt like you were like the only person he was talking to. I feel like that sounds corny a little bit, but it was like the truth, like he would always like call me and just say, oh, just checking in. Like, he just, he called like a real friend or whatever. So that was nice. And then, people spoke, principals, school people spoke too, and it was good. And then I actually, can I read something?
Sure.
So this was a note that Greg sent me. And we kind of talked about this. I don't remember actually which episode it was, but it was more like we were often talking about this idea of like recreational wokeness. And he sent me this, and I feel like I don't even think I read it. I don't remember.
Yeah.
But it was because he sent it like when I was in Spain and I was traveling and I didn't have like internet. And I looked at it today and I pulled up, and it was all stuff that he sent that he's like, okay, this is going to be for our book. Like, I'm just gathering things together. But he's like, this one, and I don't think he ever shared it. I'm not sure because, as we know, Greg posts a lot on Facebook.
Greg was a prolific Facebooker.
So sometimes he could have posted it and I don't know, but I wanted to read it.
Yeah.
If that's okay.
No,
and
absolutely.
I did open, I read this. It's not part of our program, but I wanted people to kind of understand like the work Greg and I were doing together. This kind of sums it up in some point, and it was a note. So I read it, and the crowd was mostly white. It's a quick note to our nice white people and nice white allies who are well-meaning and present in the struggle. Thank you so much. And yes, some feelings are going to get hurt. I want to personally take time out to shout out all the nice white folks who are taking a great deal of meaningful time to learn, understand, and work on social justice. This is needed. This is appreciated. Thank you. Please continue to engage. You are making a difference. The work is challenging and sometimes hard, and it is especially so if you are in your own endeavors to work and live and raise your own families, which may or may not include demographic diversity. I write this quick note just to acknowledge that your work might include some hurt feelings along the way. There are two common challenges that I hear. One, well, I would like to learn and help, but people of color and difference don't show up to the conversations. Air quotes, sorry. Or do not invite me to their groups. And two, here I am showing up and trying to make a difference, but I, quote, wind up being called out. I'm an ally. I would like to be appreciated. These are not exact descriptions, but a summary of the types of frustrations that I hear from nice white allies. I want you all to know I hear you and I understand. Hang in there. At some point, I will try to write a longer note that addresses your struggle within the struggle. There is so much to say and do and address, but for now, one simple message that I want to convey is this. There will be hurt feelings all around, and the test, quote, of our relationships is really about how we together work through the hurt and the pain, or don't work through it. Your ally pain is real. When you feel it, please also think about what it might be like for people of color and difference to carry the hurt and feelings and pain full-time and for generations. Your volunteer work and sacrifice and support are so essential to our common goals for right and justice. We need you. But I would like for you to think of this struggle in terms of a metaphor related to Southern tradition of serving up a plate of ham and eggs. There can be a distinct difference between the relationship of the players, a difference between being involved and being committed. For when you think of what contributes to that traditional Southern dish, the hen is involved, but the hog is committed. Can you imagine all of the feelings related to that? Please accept my words in friendship. The struggle continues.
That's a very Greg piece of writing. It's really Greg had a really, really amazing ability to be really empathetic, really open, but he was not blowing smoke up anybody's ass. Like, it was very, he had a really unique ability. It's, a lot of us can be nice. A lot of us can be frank. Some of us can be both at the same time. But Greg just had like an amazing talent for being completely empathic and validating and humanizing of the other person.
Oh, God. He was too good at it.
Without surrendering truth.
Yeah.
Without surrendering reality. He was good at doing both of those. And that's the hardest thing there is.
I know, and I was amazed by him. And one of the things I loved about him, though, was that even though I wasn't there, he still, like, honored my feelings and shit, you know? Like, he would be like, hey, you can be mad. It's okay, you know? And when I didn't want to be friends with Sally anymore, I'm in trouble, aren't I? This note was in relation to that, you know? Like, this was in relation to that. And it was this idea of, you know, me being hurt when white people cannot understand how their activism maybe sometimes can be like rubbing people the wrong way, or people who have experienced violence in their family, or, you know, that was racially motivated. I don't know. I just felt like he let me rant. Like, you have no fucking idea the rants. I mean, you have some idea because, like, you know me. Yeah. But, like, I would call him and I would
You,
be
the
like,
listener, have no idea because I edit them all down.
There's some cutting. But I feel like he would, like, let me do it, and he would listen to me, and he would say, you know, your feelings are valid, and, you know, and he would... No, I can't even think of, like, a time really when he, like, particularly, like, challenged me. Like, we'd have a conversation, but he definitely, like, never told me that, like, the things I was feeling was, like, wrong. Because I would say stuff. I'd be like, oh, my God, aren't you sick of all these white ladies, like, making money and writing their stupid-ass books and realizing they're white? Woo, good job, you're white, and now you're going to make a bunch of money off of it? I used to go crazy from that. I'm still mad about it, obviously. But, like... He understood my feelings about it, and he let me have my feelings, and I thought that was really amazing. So I kind of want to, if you don't mind, I just want to talk a little bit more about what happened after I read this.
Absolutely.
After I read the note to the white allies, like, people were definitely... Like, their eyes were watering and shit. I mean, you have to be like a fucking monster, honestly. If, like, I'm up there crying to be, like, to not, like, feel moved by that or whatever. Yeah. But it was good. And I said, and this is, like, what we were about. And then, you know, I did our little presentation and I talked about the words and all that. But then what I liked was when people, like, came up to speak... you know, there were some really touching things about the work he did with the youth and just how fantastic he was. And, you know, people were talking about writing emails to him and just being like, I just sent him an email to be like, can you do this? Can you do that? And that was really nice. But a friend of mine who knew Dr. Diggs also spent like an afternoon with him, you know, talking. And one of the things she said was, she's white and her children are mixed, are black and white. And so her and Greg really connected on that because they had kids at the same time, basically, and they did not think that we would be in the place we are now with race in the United States. You know, they just didn't think that. And it was really emotional. Like, she cried, but then, I feel like only like this friend of mine and Dr. Diggs used Facebook equally as much and like, like really would like get into it. But she went on like this anti-gun rant, like she was just like, guns are racist. Like, she just like lost her shit and then was like, the only reason we have guns is to come here and have a genocide against the Native Americans. And then this other lady was like, I disagree with that. Let's just honor Dr. Diggs. And she was like, I am honoring him. And everyone was like, ah, like it was like just the thing. Like, but that was the thing, is like, I couldn't really even do anything because that's the moment that Greg would have stepped in.
Yeah.
You know, I was ready to be like, brawl it out, suckers. Like, you know, like it was like a kind of a funny moment. And I loved her for doing it because she was just like, I just want to have a conversation. And I know what Greg would have said. He would have been like, that was outstanding. You know?
Excellent.
Excellent. That was truly excellent. She was really like feeling her feelings. And we want to make a space for that though, you know? And so that was, I thought, really, for me, that was kind of like a highlight, actually, because everyone else was like crying. And I mean, there was crying, but I just loved that she like just like went on like an anti-gun rant. Oh, it was great.
Greg was not reactive. He was very, I don't know, proactive. That sounds like some kind of catchphrase, proactive, not reactive or something. But that's like what I think, even when you're talking about, you were pissed off about that movie that you saw and Greg encouraged you that instead of just ranting about how pissed off about it you were, why don't you turn it into your own movie? And that was the skill that he had that I really found admirable, was that he wasn't about changing the subject. He wasn't about squashing the negative feelings, but he also had a really unique power for not letting the conversation wallow. Like you could live in that emotion, but he always found a way to turn it into something that was useful in moving the conversation forward.
Yeah.
And it's really and that's clearly from his background as an educator and as a counselor and things like that. But he had such a talent for it.
Well, it's so funny though, because I feel like we were partners, you know, and people are always like the feedback is always, oh, Dr. Diggs was great. And I'm like, okay, you know, and I would like take that shit personally. I'm like, great, Dr. Diggs is great. Like everyone says that. But I liked it. Like I got to really liking it because to me that was like the point. That's what I saw in him. And you know, I said this tonight. I thought about it and I thought, you know, I felt like I needed him to bring like validity to the things I'm saying because he is like an academic and he is a Dr. Gregory Diggs. Like I felt, and so it didn't really occur to me until tonight when I said it and I thought about it and I was like, there was part of that, you know, where I felt like, well, nobody's going to listen to me and my rants, but I'm like, if I have like this academic dude to kind of like back me up, because I knew we were like simpatico and I knew we had very similar thoughts on most things. So, I mean, even thinking about this podcast and like kind of going forward with it, even though it feels really weird to go forward without him, I think he would want me to, you know, and he always would tell me like, you know, cause I was looking through our old messages today, looking for some stuff. And I said, oh, I love collaborating with you. And his response was, the feeling is mutual, you know? So I just feel like, I guess like maybe he was, this is so like, sorry.
No.
But my husband said, if you were religious, which I'm not, he said, if you were, you would say that Greg was an angel sent here to put you on your path and to for you to keep going, you know, like that's what he got me through so much of what he did was so helpful to me after losing my mom because I needed to stay busy. That was part of it. And I am dedicated to work and I do a lot of things and I am a creative person and all of that. But like when you lose your mom, anyone out there who's lost their mom knows that there's no one else like your mom. And when she's gone, it's a lot, you know? And unfortunately, Greg also knew that, you know, and he told me a story one time about his mom, before she died, was teaching him how to like make all this food and cook these greens and do all these things. And he realized like she was like preparing him.
Yeah.
To carry on tradition. So I certainly don't think Greg expected to die.
No.
This weekend. But I do think he definitely felt like he was putting us on our paths. And he was always so amazed by like the stuff we do with our kids, you know? And he said it like verbatim, you know what I mean? He was like, he's like, I think about kids. He's like, but particularly our kids, yours and mine, you know? And he just feels like the world's not even going to be ready for like Kingston, you know?
Greg was not. It's funny. I remember when Dick Gregory died. And I don't know how old he was, but he was old. And when Dick Gregory died, I remember having the thought about how I looked forward to seeing really old Dr. Diggs in Dick Gregory mode. I remember thinking that, having that thought. And certainly I know Greg planned to be here longer, but Greg didn't make anything with the intention of having it die with him. That was never Greg's intention with anything. Everything Greg did was with the intention of empowering other people to carry things on.
And I just think about his boy, Langston.
Oh, he was so proud of that kid. Langston is on an episode. I'm not going to remember what number, but Langston was on an episode here with us. And it was very inspiring to me as a father, as a parent, watching him. He was so... Greg was never, ever, ever... There was never a hint of, you know, you don't know shit, you're a kid. There was never a hint of, kids today don't know what's going on.
He had pure pride and pleasure on his face through that entire episode.
I mean, Langston pushed back on him and called him out on some shit, like on the episode. And Greg, like, leaned forward, like you saw him get excited. He was excited to learn from his son, from younger people. He was excited to learn. He was a curious and interested guy. And that's the thing, somebody who didn't really know Greg, or maybe only heard him here on the show, a guy like Greg who has so much wisdom and who people respect, it's very easy for a guy like that to become like a pontificator, to just be a guy who just dispenses his pearls of wisdom and like walks away. That was not Greg's thing. Greg was a listener and Greg was a learner. Yeah. He was a student.
And a talker, too.
No. He could pontificate. I'm not saying he couldn't pontificate.
He did tell a lot of stories. And some of them
edited a lot of Greg material as well.
Yeah.
Greg could talk, for sure. But it was not... When Greg stopped talking, that was an invitation for you to respond. Yeah. It was not him closing the book on the conversation and saying, this is what I think, and you know, that's what it is. Greg was ready to engage always. And he wasn't afraid to engage. No,
he certainly was not.
And he wasn't afraid to be wrong.
Yeah. And I feel like that is pretty unique because I always am like, I'm not always right, but I'm never wrong. Like, I won't even, like, say it, you know? And even that, and I feel like Greg saw that in me, you know? And he was like, okay, that's how you are. You know? Like, he didn't, you know, with the Sally incident, he kind of encouraged me to, to continue my friendship or try to like work it out with this person. And I didn't want to. And instead of going on and on about it or telling me why I was wrong in that regard, he was like, okay. Because I'm an adult also. We're also adults.
Sure.
And I feel like he just, oh God, I don't even know, I'm drinking this whiskey. I'm like, oh shit. Oh, Greg. What are we going to do without him?
I really don't know. Really genuinely. That's my answer. I really don't know.
I just feel like, it's so fresh, but I feel him here. Like he was in my house so much, like he came over here like all the time. I'd be like, come over, we'll do this, we'll do that. We like got together a lot. We talked on the phone a lot. Like, I just feel like the way he was just part of our family. And I said this to his brother, Brian. Hey, Brian Diggs.
Hi, Brian.
We love you. What did he say? Now I'm all, fuck, man. You can't let me do anything.
That's all right.
Why would you let me drink that whole glass of whiskey?
Well, you didn't check with me first. I didn't know. I didn't know I had veto power over that.
Oh, no. Oh, I remember. Sorry. I sent Brian a message and I said, Greg was family to me and he was better than family because I chose him. And he chose us, So it's like better because like your family's good and all, but come on now. Sometimes you're like, damn, right?
Family's great, but you're stuck with family,
right? And so
you don't have to get into my family.
Oh God, that's a whole other episode.
It's a whole other podcast.
That's like oh Lord. So I don't know. I just felt like God, I loved how he showed up to stuff. I loved that.
He did. He was, I want to say he had incredible stamina and incredible force of life. And, I don't know, maybe that's why he burned out young. I don't know, but he was there. He was everywhere. He showed up for everything. I show up for a couple of things in a month and I'm fucking exhausted.
Yeah.
He was just at everything.
He was.
He was at everything.
And I loved too, though, like when you'd ask him to do something, unless he had like, like sometimes I'd be like, oh, can you come to this? And he'd be like, oh, my fraternity has a thing or whatever. But like in general, that guy showed up to every play I was in. Like, you know what I mean? He came to like every program I asked him to come to. He came to all our fucking dinner parties. He just like, he was just there.
He came and sat and did this podcast till 2 in the morning some nights.
We were pretty, and he would do it.
He did. He would do it, and he didn't do it begrudgingly. When he showed up, he was doing it.
And he brought wine. Usually like
wine. A Magnum, like an
it
actual.
was like a giant bottle of wine that I would make fun of.
That's true. We did make fun of his wine.
And then he was like, "Whatever, doesn't get." He's like, "I don't leave with it, do I?"
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So he was just.
That's funny.
I don't know. He just had so many excellent qualities, and I loved like his laugh too. You know what I mean? Like I liked when he would just be like, "That's funny."
Oh my God!
You know what I mean?
That like, photo people are sharing of him where he was like cheesing in this selfie, and he got caught in a snowstorm and he's getting like snowed on, and it's like. It's so cheesy. Have you seen this photo? I'll pull it up on Facebook. Okay. But he's just like, he got caught in some kind of snowstorm, took a selfie of himself, drenched with snow streaked all over his glasses, and he's just got this like big smile on, and I don't know. It's not much to describe to the listener. Sorry.
Yeah. I know.
Scroll through Gregory Diggs. Nobody had a more public Facebook than Gregory Diggs. Please feel free to look up Gregory Diggs on Facebook, and you will see literally hundreds of tributes. They are still rolling in from all over the country, probably even all over the world. Greg was Greg was known and Greg was loved, and there are a lot of people grieving for Greg right now and paying tribute. And you'll notice when you look at the tributes, you'll see people who Greg has literally kept in touch with from junior high, who he's still friends with, and you'll also see people who met him one time at one event and have a story about it and about how it affected them.
Yeah. It's just, someone I think was talking about if we had like a visual map of like what it would look like for all the lives that Greg touched and in turn who theirs, you know what I mean? Like that it would just like, it would be incredible. It would be like a web just going all over.
Greg has something like over 2,000 Facebook friends, and he was, as we've been saying, he loved Facebook, but he was not like a friend collector on Facebook. Like I believe really strongly that he had a substantive interaction with like every one of those people.
Yeah. He was, oh my God. I don't even know what to say, really. You know? I feel like it hits me like every other hour almost, like because like I'm rushing around, I'm doing things, and then when I like think about him like really being gone, like he's gone for real,
Mm-hmm.
Like I keep thinking that it's not like, that it's like, what if he was like, psych, just want to make sure you guys are going to do the work when I was gone.
Right.
The fake out, you know what I mean? Like I want that to be true.
It really doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. Like it's not, obviously we miss him and there's grief on that level, but it really just fundamentally doesn't make sense. How can Greg be dead? Nobody did more. Nobody was more vibrant. Nobody said and did things with more reverberations throughout the community. Like there's nothing that makes it all right. There's nothing that fills in the gap. It is a total gaping hole where he was. Maybe that sounds pessimistic. We got to carry on the work. Of course there's that, and of course he had positive effects on people, but I just don't, he was one of a kind, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. So
I do think about the last I saw him was when we recorded last weekend's podcast on a Sunday. But he and I went out together to see Black Panther. It was his second time, and then he saw it again the next night. And I have thought a lot about how much he loved Black Panther and how much he enjoyed it. And I'm really glad that he had this thing that he saw 3 or 4 times that really brought him a lot of joy and sparked a lot of conversation from him. I like thinking about that little thing he had toward the end.
And though that those two are Black Panther episodes, part 1 and part 2, I'm still having a hard time being because I forgot, I automatically, when someone's like, I saw Black Panther, I want to be like, oh, you have to listen to our podcast. And then I get crushed with grief in the moment when I remember, because that episode to me, and Greg hardly talked on it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because, I looked over our message. I saw it today. And he was like, listen, I'm going to really step back in that because I want to hear Maria and H soul.
Yeah, he said that.
And he said, I don't know. And he said, I'm not going to say why. That's what he said. He was like, I'm not even going to say why. And he was like.
That's right. Greg was like that. He had plans. He was he was really an educator in that sense. When you think of the best teachers you ever had, they were the people who, you would see something from like 4 weeks ago come to fruition and in the lesson plan, later. That's true. I guess we never really got to find out, but he spoke for weeks about how in that episode he was going to hang back and we were going to hear from the guests. And then after that, there would be time for some unknown thing that sadly we're deprived of now.
So I thought of that too. I did have that relief in my mind that he got to see Black Panther. Mm-hmm. Because he was such a nerd on top of all these other things. He was like a huge comic book nerd too.
Black Panther was, it was made for Greg.
Yeah.
Greg was a comic nerd. He was a sci-fi nerd.
He was a soldier. He was a general, really, right?
I like that. The Denverist website had a great obituary for Greg, and there's a quote from I feel weird if I'm talking to you or talking to them.
I don't know.
A quote from Rebekah.
Suck it up, people. Just listen to it.
A quote from Rebekah saying that he was not just a soldier, he was a general.
Yeah, and that is a stolen quote. Actually, someone said that to me about him.
Yeah,
and it really resonated with me because I always say a soldier because that's like how I describe myself. I'm always like, I'm a soldier, And she said that. She said he was like a general and we lost him. And when I was talking on the phone, I guess I just like said that, when they interviewed me. I didn't really think much of it in the moment. And then I was kind of like, whoops. But I also know that this person is definitely listening to this.
Okay.
And she will not be mad at me.
That's good. You're citing your sources. That's a
It was
Greg thing too. Greg would always have quotes from people none of us knew who he was talking about. He'd be talking about some kid from his hometown 40 years ago said, but he would always cite it very specifically.
That's true. So should I cite the person? Should I
just
say it?
Only if you want.
I will. That person was Tara Bannon. She loved Dr. Diggs. And she thought he was great. She was always trying to steal him from me for library programs. And she did say that. And I like to I'll acknowledge that I basically stole your line, but whatever. Call it reparations. I'll take half. So it's true though. That's the thing. He was oh God. I want to carry on the work. It feels hard.
Yeah.
Feels really hard. But I think we're not going to ever stop talking about Dr. Diggs.
No.
Especially on this show.
Yeah.
Because there's so many ways I feel like that he influenced both of us. So I would like to say that. But somebody posted this poem that he wrote. I don't know, did you see it? Did you happen to see it?
Which one?
The Always poem?
No.
So I'm actually planning tomorrow to go out. It won't matter because when this podcast comes out, it doesn't matter, but I'm going to go to the open mic night. Dr. Diggs used to come with me. Theo Wilson does host this open mic at the Casbah on the first and third Thursdays. And I've gone to it a few times and I've read at it. And Greg showed up for me, and Greg wrote a lot, and he was always sending us like his poems or his like remixes of his like songs, and he'd be like, yeah, I got the flow, and like we would and I used to say, I'd be like, oh, you should read, and he was like, maybe I will sometime, but he never, and I think he would have, so, but this one someone posted today, and I just felt like, maybe I'll just share this, and how I like my funny buttons, but fuck it.
No, I don't think we don't need a funny button on this one. Maybe we do.
We'll have a little one.
Yeah.
People are like, what?
Yeah, the funny button is to my knowledge, is a non-existent thing that Rebekah likes to talk about as if it's like a standard industry term. And she'll like, in the early days, I would like show her like an edit of an episode and she would be like, yeah, but what about like the funny button? And I would be like, I don't know what that is. And she would be like, yeah, you do. And then I would be like, all right. And then the next episode, I would do something and she'd be like, see, you did the funny button. I'd be like, I do not know what the fuck you're talking about. So,
But this one I thought was good, so I'm just gonna read it, and I think. Do you have more things you want to say, or?
no.
I mean, I
don't
feel like
think
it's gonna
so.
be ongoing, honestly.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
We could sit here for 4 hours and do this, but it's been about an hour. That's probably enough for
probably
a
good.
podcast listener to
Deal
listen
with
to two people just drowning in their sorrows.
Yeah. And now that I've like drunk this cup of whiskey, I'm like, all right, because I'll read this poem now. All right. So this is a poem by Gregory Diggs, and it's called Always. Please enjoy the time you have, the time we have, the times we share, for there is the love. Never forget the love you have, the love we have, the loves we share, for there is the joy. Be engaged with the joy you have, the joy we have, the joys we share, for there is the hope. Always believe that in the hope you have, the hope we have, the hopes we share, and all these things will be everlasting. Time, love, joy, hope. No need for rhyme or reason, no special occasion or season. Our thoughts and prayers are with each other, always.
We love you, Greg. Thanks for everything.
Greg, I love you. Thank you for blessing my life and the life of my family. Thank you.